Welcome to New York Nonprofit Media. My name is Jeff Stein, and I'm so pleased to be here with Alan Mucatel, who's the Executive Director of Leake and Watts. You serve over 8,000 children and families all over the New York City metro area in early child care, foster care, juvenile services, as we were just talking about before the interview. It's such an interesting cross-section of services that Leake and Watts provides, and I'd be really interested to get your take on, interacting with so many different government agencies, both on the city level and on the state level. How do you see your role steering the organization through that sort of ever-shifting ground of contracting and rule changing and all of these different government overseers?
Well, first, Jeff, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And right now, we're sitting just maybe a block away from Trinity Church. And as I was coming here to meet with you, there is the statue of John Watts in Trinity Church, as this agency was founded in 1831. And I often, when you're talking about steering an organization, today I think back of this legacy of service to children and families that goes back so far. And here he is, resting so close to where we are at the very moment. And I think how you navigate all that challenge, right? And it is a big challenge, whether it's contractual, whether it's just the very aspects of running a large, these are businesses too, right? We have 1,200 employees. We have to worry about them. We have facilities issues. I think always it's very healthy to take a step back and sort of remember where the work really lies, right? And that the work really lies in helping children, adults, and families who are facing significant adversity every single day. And when we connect back to that, when I connect back to that, when our staff inspires me by sharing with me the things that they're doing, then I think these other things are possible. Right? That it's possible to go, okay, now we need to address the matters at hand. What does it take to, we run 40 different programs in 29 different locations. And so you're right, every day there's some other regulatory body that's inspecting us for something or requesting some information for us, or there is some new regulation. And those are very difficult, in fact, often daunting to keep tabs of. I think the way that happens is you have, in our case, very lucky. It's not just me. There's a cadre of people who are very smart and dedicated, and who are specialized. So, for example, the folks in our child welfare practice are child welfare experts. The folks in our early childhood programs are early childhood educators, and they know what good practice is. They know where the direction of the field is heading, and I count on them to help me to support them in the best way possible and make us successful in what we do.
Yeah, speaking of where the future lies, I'd really love to hear about some of the most forward-thinking programs that Leake and Watts is rolling out right now. I've done a little bit of reporting on the brand new LSP program, so it'd be great to hear a little bit about that. But I know that there are a whole slew of programs that you guys that are very innovative.
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate. This organization has practically doubled in the past 6 years. That's about $40 million worth of new services, very much focused in New York City, particularly focused in the Bronx, but some of it has been expansion in work in northern Manhattan as well as in Brooklyn. And in the past, just since September of this past year, we've been fortunate to open some exciting programs, including we were able to take over a non-secure placement program for juveniles in Brooklyn and Bensonhurst. We opened a limited secure program, which I know is limited secure is an issue that you've been covering a great deal in your publication, and so we're one of 3 agencies that are providing that service to really high needs young people. We were fortunate to open a new day habilitation program for adults with developmental disabilities that another agency had been running. And in about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be opening 2 new community residences, each for 3 adults with developmental disabilities. So there's been, even right now, there's been spurts of growth. I think sort of the directions of innovation and where we see ourselves moving, we've been focusing a lot internally on learning from these various programs that we provide, what some of these unique best practices are, and what are our aspirations for what an array of services, what it means in an organization that provides an array of services to have a common language, a common belief, and some of those things, for example, if I can continue on that thought, this Leake and Watts approach, which we're calling Promise. For example, we think that every individual should direct their own services. I think that's where it really starts. And one of the pieces that's been very popular, at least right now in New York State, in services to people with developmental disabilities, is the personal outcomes measurement system that's devised by CQL. We're thinking, well, not only do we want to do that in our programs to people with developmental disabilities, but we want to take that into every other aspect of what we're doing. So this personal outcome measurement system is you interview somebody, it's about a 3-hour interview, and you're asking them, where do they see themselves in the future, what's of importance to them, what do we need to do to help to get you there? So imagine that some young person in a family comes to our foster care program, and we really, while we're supposed to, and we do focus on permanency and safety for this child, imagine if we were also really pausing to use this approach in that service. Or when a parent brings a preschooler who is diagnosed with significant autism, and they're coming to our Children's Learning Center, and we not only is there the development of a federally required individualized education plan, but we're stopping to say, okay, what do you want for your child? That mom might be saying to us, listen, I'm hopeful my child will be able to identify his letters, but right now what I really like is for him to be able to look me in the eye or to say, hi, mommy, things that are important to her or to the dad, and we want to focus on those things. So this idea of being person-focused, was one component of this Promise model. Other components have to do with trauma, have to do with overall well-being, and we're developing that, and I think that sort of unified approach to a very broad spectrum of services is, I think, a bit innovative in our world today, and I'm happy that we're doing that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about why you think it's so important to have a person-driven approach in issues that are in spaces that are maybe viewed more traditionally as criminal justice or juvenile justice. You know, I think that's one of the most interesting things about the LSP program is that it's bringing a social service mindset to youths who have been processed through the criminal justice system.
So Leake and Watts is, and it's something you and I were discussing a few minutes ago. Leake and Watts has been in the juvenile justice space for about 26 years. We've been operating the secure detention facility for the County of Westchester, which actually serves all of the lower Hudson Valley. And even though the vast majority of our services, 97% of our services, are actually in New York City for New York City residents, that program was a very bold move, I think, on the part of our board those years ago, with this lens of bringing a child welfare perspective to juvenile justice, which now, of course, has taken, I'm not saying that Leake and Watts was the only one folks to be thinking about that, but now with the Close to Home initiative, we see, I think, a tremendous effort on the part of, at that time it was the Bloomberg administration and the Cuomo administration, to bring young people who have committed crimes closer to their communities, where they can get credits that are transferable so they can continue their education. They are closer to their families and those connections can be built, and they are closer to their communities. And so when they are leaving their placement with us, they're more likely to be successful. They have greater roots and connection to the world in which they're returning. If we don't think in those terms, if we don't put that lens there, then I think we are somewhat doomed to repeat something we know that's happened time and again, and that is that we haven't helped young people who have made maybe choices that we wish they hadn't made to break from that. These young people have experienced tremendous difficulties, tremendous challenges, and they're going back often to communities where it's hard to make the choices we hope for them. Right. And if we don't have the kind of focus on them and what they want, if we just say to them, this is what you should do, this is what's right, they're not going to be successful. No, I don't want to be told what to do. I can't imagine that a 16-year-old does either. And so if we're not asking them where are they and where do they want to go, and asking their families to be part of that process, then we've missed a huge opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to shift to some of the larger issues that are facing not only your organization, but the human services sector as a whole, one of them being the minimum wage. There's been a big advocacy push this year to get the minimum wage raised to $15, and I know that there are a lot of concerns right now about funding that wage. Do you have concerns that, there hasn't really been an indication from the Cuomo administration that is a priority to fund it for the human services sector? Do you think that it is a good idea across the board? Do you think that there needs to be explicit language about funding for the human services sector?
I think minimum wage is an absolutely critical issue, and we can't deny it any longer. First of all, it's the right thing to do. There are so many people within the human services sector who are themselves, they're out there supporting our most vulnerable, whether it's in the kind of programs that Leake and Watts runs or in working with folks, with the elderly, or something that we don't do. It's all, in that sense, all the same. These are, we're talking about where our real priority should be as a society, and supporting the individuals who are making a difference in that work. And the reason we can't deny this any longer is the cat's a little bit out of the bag, or the train has already left the station. Once you've already raised the wages of food service workers in fast food restaurants, it's now set us in a course that we can't return from, nor should we. I think the challenges, though, are great. And I think they are not just about making sure that the employees that are doing this work are making the minimum wage, but before this point, they were making more than minimum wage, right? So let's say someone is making $13.50 today. That is $4.50 more than a $9 minimum wage. Mm-hmm. To get them to 15 and to compete with some other employment that is not asking nearly the same of them is, I think, would be tragic, and it would even more undervalue the very people we're looking to help and the very people who are making that help happen. I think in addition to that, we have to give thought to two other things, maybe three, that I think complicate things. And I don't, by putting it out there that they're complicated, I hope I don't sink an effort to sort of move them forward, but they're important. And that is that if let's say you were an agency and I was an agency, you may have decided to invest more in salaries, providing the same doing the same services. You may have decided to put more money in salaries, while I offered lower salaries but richer healthcare benefits. We were both getting, the agency was both getting paid the same amount on a contract. If we just look at and say, oh, let's give your agency enough money to get to $15, but we didn't give my agency enough money to offset the balance in the healthcare side, then we've done another disservice. So that's an issue. We also have to look at the fact that we have in the human services field in New York, we have funding that's coming from the city, we have funding that's coming from the state, and we have funding that's coming from the federal government. And what we definitely don't want to be doing is cannibalizing from one program that's supported in one way to another program that's supported with a different funding source. So I think that these are complex issues. I think that we need to spend a lot of energy here, but we need to fund this, and we need to fund it right. And I thought of one other thing that I should say about that as well, because I'm a little bit on a roll here. I also think that we have to be talking about the employees right now who are making $15.50 or $16, right? Who brought to the table additional skills, maybe they brought longevity, maybe they brought advanced degrees or what have you. And so now how do we look at them at $16 versus $15? And we have to be thinking about that. And so I hope I'm not scaring away the allies we have who believe in raising the minimum wage, but we better do it right.
Yeah, it seems like some opponents of the minimum wage have sort of seized on the concerns of the sector as a reason not to do it.
That would be the absolute wrong place to go. I think if we're going to have intelligent discourse about challenging matters, we should be able to express what are the issue, the problems, and the nuances and the details, but remain focused on doing what's right. And in this case, there is no doubt that we must raise the wage of our most on the folks who are most dependent to get the work done. Right. And we must think about it not just as a one-time deal, we must think about this in the long term, right? If we don't invest in the sector after we've done the right thing, and I'm hoping that we will find the will and the resources to do the right thing in the short term, if we don't address this then in an ongoing way, okay, then 10 years from now or X number of years from now, we'll be back in the exact same place, and we'll have a hard time supporting the very services that at least the folks here at Leake and Watts think is exactly where we should be putting our energy.
Now, aside from the minimum wage, what do you think are sort of the biggest challenges facing the sector right now?
Well, I think one that is related to minimum wage is this notion of COLAs, of cost of living adjustments in contracting, is this sense of, we have, for example, Leake and Watts operates preschool special education programs. So these are 3 to 5 year olds who have anywhere from a developmental delay that ultimately, with some support and an early intervention in the ways that we can provide it, will find themselves in a non-specialized education system by the time they get to kindergarten, or the amount of supports they would need will begin to diminish. Or some young people whose needs are significant and may need supports well into adulthood. Those programs have not gotten a tuition rate increase, and they're funded from the New York State Department of Education for 6 years.
Right.
That's 6 years. That's tragic. To me, it almost feels criminal. It says, if we think about our priorities as a community, it says we don't care about little kids who need the most support. And if we don't invest in them today, we are, in fact, diminishing the opportunities available to them in their future. Similarly, we operate a kindergarten through 12 special education program. They're called 853 schools. They are the schools that they're the most restrictive environments in an array of services to students with special education needs. You might start, for example, in a public school with some extra support. And an example of our school program would be a completely segregated school apart from the regular public school system. These are all public school children. They are the children who can't be served by their local school district. Right. And we've invested so little there as well. We had one increase just recently, but there's not built into it the kind of investment that's necessary to make those programs sustainable. And I think those. I'm just using those two education examples, but I do think ongoing investment in terms of cost of living adjustments to these contracts in the human services world are critical. The other one I think that's very topical right now as well as an issue that I think is important is raising the age of a criminal responsibility. New York State is only one of 2 states, the other being North Carolina, for which 16 and 17-year-olds are considered adults. That's a big mistake. We know that there's so much research right now that has indicated to us that the brain really isn't fully developed until the mid-20s, and even beyond that, we know how really plastic our brains are into adulthood, and there's so many opportunities for learning. When we treat young people as if they have the capacity to have really understood some of the decisions they've made, and don't place them in systems that are really more directed, and the adult system should be, I'm sure, invested in also more heavily in terms of support and rehabilitation and all those types of things, but really is a little bit more directed on the punitive side, as opposed to these programs for juveniles, which are really about family, community, education, and that's how we're going to send them in a path that is less likely to have them in our adult system. So I think raise age is another place that we need to put a lot of effort.
Great. Well, maybe we'll see some movement on all those issues this year. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.